Well, believe it or not, this is part of what's left of the most famous forest in the world, Sherwood, at the heart of Merry England. Now, if I was Robin Hood, I wonder what I'd think. I don't think I'd feel very happy at all. Would I, lad?
Who was that? That was a professor from Nottingham.
How could I ever hide from the Sheriff of Nottingham behind these pathetic young oak trees? And there's nowhere left to ambush the Sheriff's men from. But there is one spot where I might just feel at home, and that's beside the major oak, the largest and the grandest tree left in Sherwood Forest. But despite the fact it's all propped up on crutches, it's nowhere near as old as the legend of Robin Hood. Now, I've known of the legend since I was a child, but I've also known that there is a tree that was alive during Robin Hood's days thanks to this stamp. It's the giant kauri tree of New Zealand. It lives in a forest which any outlaw or botanist would be proud to hide in. I doubt that even the real Robin Hood could make this shot. 20,000 kilometres to the forest of Noah's Ark. Not a bad shot. At least I made it to New Zealand. Now, this forest, which contained kauri-like trees, and there's one of them, was flattened by a cataclysm all around 180 million years ago. This is the famous fossil forest of Curio Bay at the bottom of the South Island. So I'm nowhere near the real kauri tree I aimed for, the tree on my stamp. That grows way up in the warmth near the prow of Noah's Ark. Never mind, this one will have to do for a start. A smashing tree trunk and all those perfect growth rings, a real record of the past. I wonder if I can play it.
I've stood here like stone for years all alone, no more than a stump by the sea. And the story I sing is a tale of the rings of my dendrochronology. With the flora and fauna of old Gondwana, along with each species in turn. A strapping and true young sapling I grew in a forest of kauri and fern. Through halcyon days, beneath the sun's rays, I thrived in our newly formed ark. Long before mammals like possums and camels in a primeval dinosaur park felt flat by a flood of volcanic mud, I lay here as still as could be. And I'm glad that you've got into my groove, 'cause the waiting just petrifies me.
Well, I don't know if that record will ever make the hit parade, but New Zealand forest at top of the pops for me. Not all that long ago, the land was covered in trees, from the coast almost to the top of the mountains. And as we journey north to find the kauri tree on my stamp, we're going to look at some of those forests that are left. But there's no reason to stick around here, because there's only these sheep and green fields, just like the New Zealand in my school geography book. Don't you bleat at me, you're one of the main reasons that the trees have been barred from this land. In the 1,000 years since the arrival of humans, more than 70% of these wonderful forests have been destroyed. Only fragments remain, but most of them are now safe, thanks to the Kiwi brand of conservation. Today, the biggest forests of all are found in the south of the South Island. Vast expanses of a forest type that makes me feel, well, a little closer to merry England. Yep, it's Silver Beech, one of the famous southern beeches, related to the ones back in Europe, and you can tell that by looking at the bud scales, and there they are, perfect in miniatures of the ones back home. Now, the other major difference between the northern beeches and the southern beeches are that these are evergreen, their leaves are much smaller, and the leaves are toothed. There are 5 different kinds of beech tree in New Zealand. Some go in the wet, some like it dry, some like the high life, and some do better close to the coast. But they're all descendants of truly ancient stock that sailed away on the Ark. But these beech forests are different to the ones back in Europe because they're not man-made or man-managed. They are primeval in the best sense of the word. They're one of the most precious things on Earth, and all the local inhabitants agree. This would be the perfect spot in which a botanist could end his life. I'd just sit here and moulder away, and I'd know that I was going to be a beech tree, and it wouldn't take very long either because the nutrient cycling in these forests is very tight. You see, on the roots of all these trees are very special wefts of fungi called mycorrhizal, and they wrap around the roots and help to feed the trees. And in some ways they're connected up to all the other fungi and bacteria which help to break down the leaf litter and anything else which falls to the forest floor. So you see, it's a cycle of life and death, and round it goes. I wonder how long it would be if I had mistletoe growing on me. The local mistletoe around here is a bit different to the ones in Europe. They've got red flowers and much bigger leaves. But like the one at home, it's a semi-parasite. It actually grows plugged into the tree trunk and sucks on the sap as it rises up to the leaves. And it's not the only sapsucker around here. These beech trees look well and truly burnt, but it's got nothing to do with fire. What looks like charcoal is actually a sooty mould, another sort of fungus that lives on the bark, feeding on a substance called honeydew, sweet as honey and sparkling like the dew. Honeydew is the lifeblood of the beech tree. It gets to the outside thanks to a strange scale insect, a member of the long-bottom family. Its mouth parts are tapped into the sap supply, and what it doesn't use plops out at the other end. Yes, that long waxy tube is its bottom, the longest bottom in the world. Many creatures of the beech forest come to feed on the pure energy that drips from billions of bare bottom. Here, have a care, mate. The only fly in the ointment is actually a wasp. Introduced European wasps have also taken a liking to honeydew. They've now reached plague proportions in parts of the country, and millions of wasps are stealing the energy supply the native animals rely on. But there is another animal which is stealing the forest itself and turning it into these. wood chips made from a fantastic timber, the southern beech, and in there are lots and lots of mineral nutrients, all calcium and potassium and sodium, but also nitrogen and superphosphate. And what worries me is who is going to put that back into the land to grow the next crop of trees? And if they don't, then it'll just go to third scrubland of no use to anyone. And as these mountains of beech wood chips go up and up on the wharf ready for export, the hills on which the beech originally grew begin to crumble away. It's a terrible waste, for these ancient beech forests are being felled and chipped just to make paper, most of which is going to be chucked away, and the hills are left stripped of their soil. It was sites like this which so incensed New Zealanders that they organised their opposition to stop the destruction. Old established conservation groups like the Royal Forest and Bird Protection Society and the younger Maruia Society spoke up on behalf of the trees. They pointed out that there was much more loss than profit, and they won the day. But the struggle still goes on for forest on private land. Guy Salmon, the Robin Hood of New Zealand's forest, told me how they fought and won a more recent battle.
Well, we did it first by building up public awareness, and I think the key thing was we got a whole lot of our supporters out on the water in little boats and dinghies and sailing boats, and they floated out in front of that great big Japanese wood chip carrier as it was coming into port, and they blockaded the port entrance. And everybody thought, wow, this thing can be stopped. We can stop the destruction of these forests.
At last it appears that there is gold at the end of the rainbow for the remaining beech forests of New Zealand. The roots of the trees will still be there, continuing their vital job of protecting the soil from erosion and producing their own version of liquid gold. Sweet water stained by humic materials, the chemical fingerprint of the ancient forest. Sweet water like no other on earth, making its way down to the coast, eventually to be polluted by the salty sea. No, all this foam isn't the sign of a polluted sea. In fact, it's exactly the opposite. It shows us that this stretch of coast is in absolute pristine condition. You see, all the hinterland is covered with that wonderful forest with the thick organic humus, and as the rain flushes the organic acids and the other chemicals out, it hits the sea and turns into nature's own detergent foam. In fact, I'm bathing in the purest foam in the world. And the bit stuck all over me is black sand. Makes me feel like a pint of Guinness. I don't mind if I do. Meanwhile, on another stretch of the southern coast, all this organic material in the water does some very special things for a very strange forest. This is Fiordland, the southernmost and largest national park of New Zealand. And despite the prevailing weather, it draws tourists here by the thousands. They come to see the ice-carved scenery from the comfort of a boat floating on the sea. Most of the tourists are inside, but I'm out enjoying the weather. You see, misty mountains make for lots of rain, and this is one of the wettest places in the whole of New Zealand. In fact, there's so much fresh water around here that they've even thought of exporting the stuff. go Fiordland. Oh, and it was a good year, good nose, brilliant, sparkling clear. And that comes directly down from glaciers and snowfields right into my glass. And there it is. And it's still eminently drinkable. But note the difference in colour, directly from the waterfall and out of the sound. Now, in there, remember in Bath, back up on the coast, well, in there, all those same chemicals that produce that foam suffused out of all the forest covering the catchment of Milford Sound, you see, and they float about, this great layer of freshwater floats about on top of the seawater underneath and creates some very, very special conditions way down under. The floating layer of golden fresh water filters out much of the sunlight, so not very far down below is a dark, calm and crystal clear world, conditions you'd normally find only much deeper in the ocean. So here on the walls of the fjord, an amazing range of deep water creatures live in the shallows. A forest not of trees, but of animals. Corals, anemones and giants like this sea pen, which doesn't mind being stroked. These tree-like animals don't use the sun directly. They survive on organic material that floats down from the freshwater layer above, or on plankton washed in with the current. This really is a gobbling forest of tiny mouths. Every natural forest has its great trees, and here they're made of coral. Tree corals are usually only found at great depths, but here in Fiordland they grow within 5 metres of the surface, each with thousands of tiny individual polyps living in a tree-shaped colony. This underwater forest is one of New Zealand's best-kept secrets, and almost as secret are other wet places which are my idea of botanical heaven. It's a bog. Come and have a look. Bogs are nice, simple things because the plants which grow here form the substrate on which all future generations of plants will grow. Organic peat, and there, look, the world's 2 major peat formers. In the northern hemisphere, the bog moss, sphagnum forms of peat, where down in the southern hemisphere, and especially here in New Zealand, the wire rushes, the members of the Restionaceae. Gosh, what a start. I wonder what else I can find. And there, if I'm not mistaken, is a plant which locates me right on the west coast, the modest bulbinella, a member of the lily-flower family. And if you know about bogs and things, well, you can read them like a map and locate yourself anywhere on the earth. But anywhere you do go, you're sure to find insectivorous plants because there's very little nutrient down here. And there's one of the locals with its purpley flower, a bladderwort. And down almost underground, there are leaves modified as bladders which trap and catch the insects. And I tell you, it's all happening around here because there's a fern bird, another insect eater, and a bird which specialises in living in a bog, and a bog which is covered with a fern that looks like a bird. Now this is the fern kahikatea, and the Maori name for it is Wewe kotaku, because there you are, it looks like the feet of a white heron. The white heron, or kotaku, is a very rare bird in New Zealand. And its rarity gives it a strong presence in Maori myth and legend. They nest in only one colony here on the west coast in part of the World Heritage Forest. The forest they've chosen to nest in is of a type which is now also very rare. And like the bird, the trees like getting their feet wet too. What funny, wriggly feet you've got, kahikatea. Kahikatea has these enormous buttress roots because it likes to live in swampy ground, but it's also the main mast of Noah's Ark, 60 metres up there to the first branch and 10 metres beyond that. So you can guess what Captain Cook, the first European to see this sort of tree, thought as he sailed past the kahikatea forest. But we don't have to guess because he wrote it all down. The banks of the river are clothed with the finest timber my eyes have ever beheld. Now that's saying something, because his eyes must have beheld some of the very best forest in his travels around the world. He was also the first person to wield a steel axe in the kahikatea forest of New Zealand. And to my eternal shame, the bloke who held his coat was one Joseph Banks, an English botanist. Joe Banks and I, you know, are in the same boat. We're both fascinated by plants. I go around the world all trying to make people save the ones which are becoming rare, whereas he went round a very different sort of world, discovering new plants and finding new uses for them. And that's why he and Captain Cook were up this river, which they call the Thames. Things have certainly changed around here since Cook's day. As they stepped ashore, the enormous trunks of the trees that grew around here must have looked as though they could supply all the timber that Britain could ever want. So not very long after Cook's discovery, the sound of axes would have echoed along this riverbank. Kahikatea was taken for the masts and timbers of the British Navy, but they soon discovered that they made a big mistake. Kahikatea was just too soft and rotted away in a few years, and so they reckoned the only thing it was any use for was burning. And that's what happened to much of the magnificent forest which grew round here. It was burnt and turned over to farmland. Farmland which produced the famous butter of New Zealand, which even in my young days was exported around the world packed in wooden boxes. Boxes which in these days of high-tech farming are obsolete and are very hard to find. Still being put to good use, one of the old butter boxes. You see, before the days of stainless steel, butter was exported around the world in wooden crates, and that wood had to be resin and odour-free so that it didn't taint the precious content. And which was the best wood to use? Kahikatea. Male kahikatea with their little brown cones, and female all blue, green and gorgeous. Mum and Dad, the union that spawned millions of butter boxes. This use of kahikatea led to a whole new phase of forest destruction. But today, some of the farmers, realising the value of the native forest, have allowed regeneration. There are lots and lots of seedlings. Although they're only very small, given a chance, they'll grow up into forest giants, just like their mums and dads. New regeneration. And it's all done simply by fencing out the cattle. It wasn't only kahikatea that was cleared for sheep and cattle. The Europeans were determined to conquer the land. In the period between 1860 and 1920, more than a third of New Zealand was converted into pasture. And nowhere felt the effects of this more than in the subtropical climate of North Island. And if you don't believe I'm in the tropics, just look at the plants. This is rainforest, and no, not your actual tropics. It has many characteristics in common with the forests of the Amazon. Everything about them says that this is the tropics, man. There, a nice bunch of stilt roots. And how's that for a buttress root, complete with filmy ferns, and it's supporting much more than a tree trunk. Climbing ferns, perching plants, all sorts of things up there in the high canopy. The most prominent hanger-on is the northern rata. Its midsummer flowers are one of the few splashes of colour in the New Zealand forest canopy. It starts life as an epiphyte, perching on the trunks of one of the forest giants. Then it grows a root down the trunk to the ground. In time, the rata forms its own pseudo-trunk, which strangles the supporting tree. All these epiphytes, stranglers and danglers are typical of tropical rainforest. And they've even got a palm, the knee cow, the only member of this great tropical group of plants found growing naturally in New Zealand. Like natural forests all over the world, those of New Zealand are becoming rarer. Often their place is taken by foreign trees, exotics. This one is now vying for the distinction of being the commonest tree in New Zealand. This particular tree finds the decks of Noah's Ark completely irresistible, and though not a native, it's now found all over the country. In fact, there's millions more Monterey pines growing here in New Zealand than there is in its original native home, the Monterey Peninsula in California. The best place to see the pine trees growing is in the Kaingaroa forest of the central North Island. The rich volcanic soil still grows trees at a fantastic rate in what was once the world's largest man-made forest. A giant plantation which made New Zealand a major timber exporter. You can almost hear them grow. Trees for pulp, trees for paper, and trees to build wooden houses, which are so strong they can be picked up and moved about from place to place. Anyone at home? No one about. I'll take a look. It all made of pine. What a fantastic job. I wonder whether I could get one back to England.
A very good day to you, David. Welcome to the natural timber world of Lockwood. The solid timber houses without the traditional 4x2 framing. Sounds revolutionary, doesn't it? But we have been building these houses for 30 years using this unique system of solid laminated planks and corner profiles that lock together to form a versatile structure with a distinctive natural timber interior and strong. We subjected one of our houses to 22 simulated earthquakes up to 7.5 on the Richter scale, and the house emerged undamaged. Sounds amazing, doesn't it? Of course, we can do 2 stories, mezzanines. This is the smallest home in our range, but just take a look at the living space. Airy and generous, once again with that distinctive natural wood interior. But the exterior also has features you will enjoy. I think you should have a look at the low-maintenance aluminium sheathing that we use in there.
Not a bad sales pitch. He really threw himself into it. But he didn't tell us about the most exciting thing of all, the timber from which these are made, Monterey pine. Now, around here, they grow at a fantastic rate. And although it takes a timber of 40 trees to make a unit like this, well, the pine forests of New Zealand grow the equivalent of 300,000 of these every year. That's 834 a day. Amazing. Wooden houses on the move are a common sight on New Zealand roads, but even more common are wooden houses that don't move. Towns and cities with street upon street of houses made of wood. The older ones are not of pine, but are made of native timbers. Fantastic, aren't they? So it's easy to forget that native forests had to be cut down to make them in the first place. And it's also easy to forget that if it hadn't have been for the pine from Monterey, a lot more native forest would have been destroyed. Thankfully, some of these ancient forests still remain, and in the North Island, some of them are safe in national parks. Though you wonder how safe they are on the slopes of the volcano I grew up knowing as Egmont, but it's now known as Taranaki. This is a real tourist high spot. They've come to see the view from the top, but we've come to see the forest lower down. Forests that include some mighty records. And the first we encounter coming down the mountain is just chest high. It's a forest of daisy trees called leatherwood, and as it's been a record flowering year, it's like walking through a pot of honey. Lower down is true goblin forest. The branches are festooned with curtains of moss and lichen, and one of the world's botanical treasures. A very special plant with a rather special name, Mazipteris, spelt with a T-M. And though a world record in its own right, it does grow in places other than New Zealand. Now, it's reckoned to be related to the first plants that ever had leaves that ever grew on Earth. So there it is, the prototype leaf, the green print for the future. It doesn't hide anything at all. It tells us that it's related also to the ferns, because there are the spore-bearing capsules or sporangia. Lower down the mountain, the trees get taller. And so do other things. The next plant in the Taranaki record book, there before my very eyes, the largest moss in the world, Dawsonia superba. And as mosses grow, they don't get much bigger than that. It comes complete with capsules full of spores, each one a potential record breaker. And if you're not very impressed with mosses, how about the biggest and tallest ferns in the world? Marmacoon. Imagine having one of those in my greenhouse. Mind you, I'd have to raise the roof a bit, at least 15 metres. And I'd have to build an enormous greenhouse if I was going to grow all New Zealand's different sorts of ferns. There are more than 170 varieties to choose from, and more than 50 are found nowhere else on Earth. All these ferns would really make a dinosaur feel at home, and so would the forests that lie at the foot of Taranaki. They're made of podocarps, a special family of trees that have done very well in New Zealand. But to really get to know them, we must go to the best of the dinosaur forest in the heart of the North Island. When I fired my arrow way back in Sherwood Forest, I'd have been quite happy if it had landed here. Because, you see, a few years ago, I left a little bit of my heart here in Whirinaki. I was privileged to join some very determined New Zealanders who helped save these ancient forests. It was here that the destruction of the great dinosaur forest were brought to the attention of all New Zealanders, when a group of people chained themselves to the top of the forest giants and said, "Stop This slaughter is the last great stand of torture left in the whole world, so it must be given a better chance. And a petition from the people was delivered to the government. A petition which saved the forests of Fiordland and Whirinaki from extinction. So, what was all the fuss about? What's so special about these trees, and why did everyone get so worked up? Well, follow me on a walk and I'll show you, because I'll introduce you to the fabulous family of the giant podocarps. One of the amazing things about this truly amazing place is I could have been taking this walk more than 60 million years ago, because the ancestors of the trees growing round about were living on Noah's Ark when the dinosaurs were alive. So you see, I could be a giant plant-eating dinosaur looking for a meal, or a nice tree on which to scratch me itchy back. And the first one he'd have met is Rimu, because it's the commonest of the podocarps hereabouts. And perfect. Now, as a botanist, I look up and I see the droopy foliage, and it tells me it is Rimu. But for a down-to-earth dinosaur, it's the bark that gives it away, furrowed and flaky, and it's the ideal for the perfect itch. And contented, standing here, I can see the whole family of the podocarps. In fact, it's a real family gathering. And here we have two for the price of one, Miro and Matai, or is it Matai and Miro? You see, down at this level, it's difficult to tell them apart because the barks are very similar. It looks as if someone's come along with a giant hammer and gone bang, 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 hammer bark. And they do say you can tell the difference by hammering on the bark with your knuckles. Now, this one's Miro, a high note, and that one's Matai, a duller note. Miro, Matai. Now, of course, if you're a deaf botanist or a dinosaur, well, you've got to climb right up to the top of the tree and look at the foliage. $80 million years ago, a pterosaur might have flown over the green cumulus cloud canopy of these dense mixed podocarp forests. And up there amongst the foliage you'll find the fruit that tells you it's a podocarp, a word which means fleshy foot. There's the seed at the top and there's the fleshy foot down below. Food for birds like the pigeon and perhaps even for pterosaurs, which would have carried them far and wide across Gondwana. And this one belongs to my old friend, the butterbox tree. Now, the dinosaurs lived on Earth when the ancestors of these giant trees were here. And so they have to be dinosaur food, because if a dinosaur's going to get anything to eat, it's got to push it over. And what better protection than these enormous buttress roots? And of course, they're the trademark of kahikatea, ideal for growing in swampy places. And of course, they would have made them absolutely dinosaur food. Even a herd couldn't have pushed one of these over. But there are things that can topple even the biggest giants. And to show you, I've climbed up one that's been toppled by the wind. And of course, here on Noah's Ark, there's volcanoes and earthquakes that can topple these giants. And once flat on the forest floor, the magic of regeneration begins. Tawa here getting off to a good start. And here's a pole stand of young back scratchers, Rimu all pushing up towards the light. Strong and supple, but I wonder whether it's got the character to grow up to maturity. Because in a stand of Rimu like this, only a few will grow to be among the forest giants. And the fifth in my family of soft flat-footed, juicy giant is Tortora, king of the forest, a tree revered by the Maori and prized by their canoe builders and their carvers. A heritage of wood, a heritage from wood, straight-grained and durable, the red heart of Moa's art. But today in such short supply that there is a desperate need for a royal plantation. A new direction for New Zealand forestry. Rising 3-year-old Tortora, and despite a certain amount of pruning by the local herbivores, doing well, and all set to be a fast-growing timber tree. And over here, look at that, same species but a totally different shape, lots of side branches, ideal as a hedging plant. Seed from these trees has come from many sites, and scientists will be assessing the potential of all these saplings. Those with the best qualities will be selected for timber production. If only that research had been done, say, 50 years ago, and then amongst the great plantations of pine we could perhaps be walking through groves of native timber, each busily producing fine wood. Still, better late than never, and at least now the New Zealanders are beginning to appreciate the fine qualities of their own flora. One person in a good position to see this is a nurseryman working on the outskirts of Auckland, Graham Platt.
As a plantsman, I find it really exciting that people are growing native plants in their garden, and it's a great joy to me to have gone out and collected the seed and then walked down the street and see these growing in people's gardens. It's like old friends waving to you.
New Zealand's plants aren't show-offs with whacking great flowers, but their form and textural qualities are unique and now are in great demand across the world. The hebe is as famous as the kiwi, the flax as the All Blacks, and cabbage trees are everyone's favourite greens. Even for hardcore botanists like me, there are things I'd come across the world just to see. When it comes to New Zealand's native plant, Graham's got most of, including some of the rarest. This is Tecamanthes speciosa, and it was down to a single plant. All the rest have been eaten off by goats. Now, thanks to Graham, there are thousands of them growing all over the world, and to the locals they come quite cheap, because he reckons the more there are growing in native New Zealand, the safer they are from extinction. And here's another one, Ponantia baylesiana, made it into the Guinness Book of Records as the world's rarest tree. That was until Graham got his hands on it. Just look what he's done. Now there's plenty of them. The gardeners of New Zealand are ensuring the survival of some of Noah's Ark's rarest plants. If I'm not mistaken, my first kauri. I've come all the way through New Zealand and now I'm in the warm north, the home of the kauri. Here, Graham, is there anything special about this one?
Yes, well, it's a kauri seedling from the giant Tane Mahutu in the Waipua forest. And it was...
From the one on the stamp?
That is correct.
Wait a minute. There, look, there's a picture of your mum. Just like a chip off the old block.
That's the one.
Only 6 years old and already twice as tall as me. A real little grower. Look, there's even grandchildren on the way. The next generation of kauri giants in these male and female cones. Grow well, little kauri tree. I'm off to find your parents. The tree on my stamp is still 200 kilometres away, but at least I'm in kauri country. It is said that the tallest and largest trees in the world live in California, the giant redwoods. But the kauri surely deserves a place in the record books, because when people turned up on the scene, kauri giants marched across the landscape. Now these forests are mere shadows of their former selves. And who knows where the biggest tree grew and when it celebrated its final birthday.
Happy Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Carrie Tree. Happy birthday to you.
And I bet that's the first time we've ever had happy birthday sung to him. And we did it because we reckon he's 300 years old this year. That means it's not much more than a child itself. Some of the really ancient cowries could have been a couple of thousand years old. As cowries get old, they don't lose their hair, they lose their bark. It falls off in big scales, which is a very clever way of stopping clinging vines and epiphytes from sitting on your trunk. My friends and I collected 20 pieces each of this tree dandruff for a rather special demonstration. I think we've got enough bark now.
I have. Then Shannon left it on.
On we go, finish the top of Mandel off. There's a big hole where Auckland is, come on. Auckland and Cowrie. And we're putting the finishes touches to the map of North Island, New Zealand. Now, that's the north part of New Zealand, and that was all covered with kauri forest until not all that long ago, perhaps 150, 200 years. And then something terrible happened. A giant hurricane hit, destroyed all the forest. And what I want you to be is that hurricane and blow all the kauri away. But I'm going to hold on to one piece. Right, ready? Blow. Goodness, it's raining too. Well done, mighty winds of New Zealand. You see, and that's all that was left, 1/300th of the original area of forest. And of course, it wasn't wind, was it? It was people with axes and matches. And, you know, some of that wood was used for building fine houses, but lots and lots of it was wasted, and much was just burned. And so many wonderful trees destroyed. Unfortunately for the kauri, its perfect straight-grained heartwood makes it the world's best timber tree. In a time before chainsaws and bulldozers, millions of cubic metres of kauri were removed from the forest and transported to ships for export. The leviathans of the forest, and like the great whales, the world must mourn their slaughter, and pray that within the forest there is still the gene stock to allow future giants to grow. But just how big were the biggest kauri trees? Well, I'll show you. In any forest there are lots of different sized trees, all some big ones, some small, some short, some fat, some thin, some which grow slowly and some which grow very fast. But in the kauri forest of New Zealand there were some enormous giants. And the biggest we know about was as big as the outer circle, 23 metres in circumference. And how tall it was we'll never know because they chopped it down. But it really was an enormous whopper. The children who visit the kauri forest of today can only imagine the big trees of old. Only fragments of the forest remain, spread across Northland, but at least New Zealanders are now doing their bit to save the little they do have left. Some farmers who have a kauri forest on their land enter into an agreement or covenant with the National Trust to protect their patch. This means that Bill Tomlinson's forest is now permanently protected. Yes, even if he decides to sell his farm.
We have got a piece of paper that say, with our name on the title, saying that we own this land, this farm. But really, the land's been here for millions of years. It's going to be here for millions of years after we're gone. So we're really only caretaking it. So I guess, yeah, we're doing it for for the future generations. Also, the situation of this farm, it's handy to a growing township, a rapidly growing township, which is going to need more recreational areas, and hopefully people will be able to get into some native bush as it is and enjoy it while it's still there.
And that's exactly what I've been doing as I've journeyed through the forests of Noah's Ark. And at last I've made it. For here, safe inside the Waipua Sanctuary, is the largest kauri tree standing today. The tree on my stamp, Tane Mahuta. Lord of the forest, what a tree! I've come halfway round the world just to see you, and I'd love to rush up and give you a cuddle, but I can't, because big as you are, you've got very tender toes. You see, the roots of the kauri spread right out and feed up in those surface layers of litter and bark. So you see, too many people walking close to the trunk would kill it stone dead. And that's why I and all the other visitors must stay behind the barrier and worship Tane Mahuta from afar. And that's exactly what we must do. It was here in Waipua that the very first battle to save the New Zealand forest was fought and won. This is the very altar of forest conservation. As I travelled across the world to greet my old friend here, the picture was the same all along the route. Despoilation, destruction, erosion, pollution and starvation. And yet I can stand here, safer in the knowledge that the people of New Zealand have come to the realisation that they must conserve the natural heritage of their country, of which Tane Mahuta is such an important part. And if only the rest of the world can follow suit, then perhaps we can all hold the power of creation in our hands.